Stanley Kubrick's last film, Eyes Wide Shut, is one of those movies that people have debated for decades. But what if the secret isn't just about sex and jealousy? What if it's about physics? Today, we're diving into a really wild theory that sees the whole film as a hidden allegory for the quantum world. Okay, so here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll hit the main idea. Then, we'll look at how the movie's big conflict is just like the collapse of classical physics. We'll follow our hero on his quantum journey, figure out what those masks are all about, and then see how it all comes together with the crazy idea of entanglement. All right, first things first. Let's get right to the heart of this quantum allegory. This huge claim that flips the whole story on its head. Yeah, this is the big idea right here. This is what changes everything. The theory goes that underneath this story of a marriage falling apart, Kubrick hid a parable about reality itself. The characters, they don't just act like people, they act like quantum particles. Unstable, totally uncertain, and only becoming real when they're being watched.
Okay, so that leads us right to the collapse of the classical world. To really get the quantum chaos that's coming, we have to first understand the super stable, predictable world that's about to get completely blown apart.
So at the beginning of the movie, think of Dr. Bill Harford's life as, well, a classical universe, a Newtonian one. It's totally predictable. He's like a billiard ball moving on a table. You know its path. He thinks he knows his wife, he knows his place in society, he knows who he is. Everything just makes sense. But then, boom. The disturbance. Alice's confession about her fantasy isn't just a bombshell for their marriage. In this allegory, it's a quantum event. It injects this profound uncertainty that just shatters Bill's entire reality. All of a sudden, the wife he thought he knew is in a superposition of states. She's loyal and disloyal, familiar and a stranger, all at the same exact time. And this is where it gets really cool, right? It perfectly maps that psychological breakdown onto a core concept in physics. Bill's world goes from being, deterministic to totally probabilistic and uncertain. And his own identity, which he thought was so solid, is now just a jumble, a superposition of jealousy, curiosity, fear, all mixed together. So this total collapse sends Bill wandering out into the New York night. But if you're looking through this quantum lens, it's not just some guy walking around the city. No, it's a particle on a really, really strange journey. He's not a solid thing with a clear path anymore. He's more like a wave of possibilities, and every single interaction changes him. His identity isn't something he has, it's something that happens to him when other people observe him. So every major stop on his journey, think of it like a scientific measurement. When he's with the prostitute, he sort of collapses into the state of potential client. When he talks to the piano player, he becomes an inquisitor, and that interaction opens up a whole new field of possibility. And then, at the ritual, he tries to get measured and defined by this new system. But, as we're about to see, that measurement fails. Big time. Which brings us to, honestly, the most famous and weirdest scene in the whole movie. The masked ritual. This is where the physics metaphor gets super specific. It's where the masks literally become quantum numbers. Okay, but before we get into the ritual, we gotta do a quick physics 101 on this. So what are quantum numbers? Basically, they're just labels. Think of them like a particle's social security number. Its spin, its charge. They define what a particle is and how it's allowed to behave in a system. Okay, so here's the wild part. The theory says the masks aren't to hide who you are. They're to assign you a new identity. The mask is like a particle's spin. It's what makes you legible inside the very ordered system of the ritual. If you don't have the right mask, the right quantum number, you just don't belong. I mean, look at this. It's a perfect one-to-one translation. The mask is a quantum number. The whole ritual space, that's a coherent quantum field. The guy in charge, the master of ceremonies, he's like the force that governs the whole system's energy. And Bill is the glitch. He's an anomaly with the wrong properties, and he's throwing the whole thing out of whack. So what about the woman who saves him, the one who sacrifices herself? In this theory, she's like a virtual particle. Now, in physics, these are bizarre little things that just pop into existence for a split second, breaking all the rules. But in doing so, they actually restore balance to the system. And her appearance, so ghost-like, so impossible, it perfectly mirrors that. She's this forbidden event that has to happen to kick the anomaly, Bill, out and make the system stable again. All right, so after all that chaos, how does this thing actually resolve? Well, the end of the film takes us to one of the absolute weirdest ideas in all of physics, entanglement. Yeah, quantum entanglement. This is the thing Einstein famously called spooky action at a distance. It's where two particles get so connected that they basically stop being two separate things. They become one single system, sharing one existence. You measure one, and the other one instantly reacts, no matter how far apart they are. It's the total destruction of individual classical identity.
And then Bill gets home, and he sees the mask from the ritual on the pillow, right next to his sleeping wife. It's just a gut punch. And in our allegory, this is the quantum world, the chaos, the uncertainty, invading the safe, classical world of his home. It's the final proof that these two worlds were never really separate. They're entangled.
Which leads us to the very last line of the movie, from Alice. Now, on the surface, it sounds pretty blunt. But in this allegory, it's not just about sex, it's about physics. The theory says that this is the act that re-entangles them. It's the moment they stop being two separate particles lost in this fog of maybe this, maybe that, and they collapse back into one single shared state. It's them finally accepting that their identities aren't their own. They're relational. They're created together. They are fundamentally inseparable. So what's the big takeaway here? The film uses this intense human drama to show us something profound about the quantum world. Our identity? It's not a thing we own. It's an event. It only happens when we interact with others. And love, or desire? Well, it works just like entanglement. It's about binding two separate people into one shared, unpredictable reality. And that's the final, mind-bending question this whole allegory leaves us with. It really makes you wonder about your own identity, right? Are you this solid, predictable thing you think you are? Or are you something much, much stranger? Just a wave of possibilities, only becoming a self when someone else is looking.